Okay, in this movie I want to talk about surfacing a little bit and how to apply just a basic surface and then maybe try some goofy things out and see where it goes from here. So first thing, I have the model from the last movie and I'm going to just click on that model. And to apply an initial surface, I'm just going to right click, come down and just choose Assign Material, New Material. And we'll just come in and I'm going to just choose a blend surface. And depending on the surfaces you pick, you'll have different options here and here, but you can see that this is kind of a glossy shape, a nice glossy surface. Now we can go in and change color, and obviously that high updates. You can goof around with things such as ambient color, so it can make it brighter or less bright in this environment. Incandescence, let's fiddle around with that a little bit. Ooh, you can see that totally starts to look kind of neon-y in a background. But in any case, you can fiddle around with these and adjust each of them. If I go in, let's see if I apply a bump map. Let's just apply a fractal bump map to this. And then I'm going to go ahead and press 6 on here so that we can just see if there's any difference. We don't see it in this. Let's go ahead and do a rendering of this and see if we see anything. Yeah, so there's the bump map applied. You can see a bump map has quite this crusty look to it. One thing to be aware of with bump maps is that bump maps only affect the way the surface is rendered. You'll notice it doesn't displace the surface. So in here, along the side, along the edge, you'll notice it's still nice and smooth. So a bump map is really, it's not fake. It's still capturing light and shadow and adjusting it, based off of the bump. But it's just important to understand that the bump map doesn't displace things. So you could try a bump map like that. Oh, notice that also that was with Mental Ray. Let's see what this looks like if I switch this over into just Maya software. Let's try it out and see if we get any difference. Yeah, you can see that it looks a little different with Maya software versus Mental Ray. So again, just goofing around with those guys and seeing what the result is a great idea. Now, one thing I'm going to do is click on, I clicked, I guess it's 4 buttons down on the display view, and I'm going to just change this bottom panel over so that I can look at the hypergraph. And we'll just bring up hypergraph, and I'm going to click on a little button here that shows us how all these how everything is connected in here. So for instance, here is our blend surface, and when I click on that, notice that over on the side it pops up and I can see all of these items in here. So that's kind of a cool thing to be aware of. If I want to go in and edit this a little bit, I could adjust some of these functions so that it would not be so great. Notice I can bring the amplitude value down, etc. So make some of those adjustments, and then maybe back in the blend surface, maybe we want to apply a image to this instead. So to do that, what I'm going to do is by color here, notice where there's the little checkerboard. I'm going to click on that, and it brings up these 2D textures that I can apply. I'm going to go ahead and apply a file. And when I do that, it just opens up and it blanks out because there's no file selected. In the side, notice that there's image name. I'm going to go ahead and press the little browse button. And I conveniently brought up Ducky here. We'll just open up Ducky. And Ducky pops in. Now I'm going to go ahead and just view this. Now to adjust Ducky, I'm going to just click on this shape and go under Create UVs to Planar Mapping. And when I do that, I get this kind of nice interactive grid. I can scale that grid up or down. What planar mapping does is it projects a map of this duck in one dimension. It just shoots it across, and that dimension comes all the way across, and then it's reflected on the opposite side. And you can see here's where the plane begins. I can drag this out, and you can see everything kind of follows around with this projection. Now there's other types of projections too, so you don't have to live with planar. If I go under Create UVs and choose cylindrical mapping instead, notice that from this view I get this great big cylinder, and if I click and drag the corners, or I'm sorry, the edges, I can wrap that cylinder around. So now I have the cylinder wrapping all the way around the image. I can adjust height. If I grab one of these guys, and it's just going to continue to repeat it, so you can get something pretty goofy looking there. And of course, if I don't have these so close to each other, it's going to repeat the images as well next to each other. So as I wrap this around, notice I get more and more of the images coming around the edges here. So this can be kind of a fun way to apply imagery onto a shape. You don't necessarily have to live with just the colors that you're looking at. So let me make a little bit of an adjustment here, and then let's render this and see what happens. So there's the planar map with the bump map applied. Now I've got Maya software turned on, so I've got this hard-edged object. Remember, if we go over and choose a different renderer here, if I pick Mental Ray instead, now I get that smooth edge of the model, and I get the crunkly bump map surface, plus I have the image applied. Now you can also apply, you don't have to have images just applied to the entire shape. You can apply a surface to just a part. So I'm going to right click on this and choose face, and I'm just going to shift select and pick a couple of faces here, and then right click and just assign a new surface. And let's pick something else here. I'll pick Lambert instead. And when Lambert comes up, you can see that it automatically changes this surface area. And if I pick a color, again, I can choose a different color. Well, let's go on the cool side this time. So I can pick a cool color, and that applies it just to that section, which is kind of nice. And again, I could apply a different image if I wanted to this area. Same kind of things apply here. So you can do it at a polygon level, or you can do it at a object level as you're applying these surfaces. Now I'm just kind of touching the tip of this stuff, but the key thing is I just want you to experiment with surfacing and fiddle around with applying images if you want. I guess the other thing is let's go back into that hypergraph view. Again, I'm going to just show the hypergraph panel, and let's just do this. And here's that Lambert section that I had applied. Notice you can click and drag these. So here's the polygon surface, and the polygon surface has a couple of these different things applied. So I have the Lambert surface applied here, and then I have the whole blend thing with the file that I've placed. Here it is applied, and then here's the overall blend texture. Here's the Lambert texture. If I want to get rid of that, if I just press delete, notice it removes that texture from my object, or surface from my object here. So this little graph is kind of a nice thing. You can zoom in on it, and you can move around in there too. So oops, sorry. If I right, if I press A, it'll pull out so I can see everything in here. I can right mouse click and navigate around with Option, so I can zoom in, zoom out. I can, let's see what left mouse clicking does. It doesn't do anything, but I could also middle mouse click with Option and pan. So you have the same controls as you do in the other views to zoom in and out if you need to check something out. But this can be kind of a nice way to instantly get to, boy, how did I work on that surface? Come in and find the surface. And remember, you don't have to name it just blend 1. I mean, you could name it something that makes more sense to you as well. But that's it as far as surfacing. I'm just, again, just touching the real basics, but you can start with that. There's all kinds of different types of maps that can be applied, and obviously what I've got here isn't very functional in terms of making a real world model, but in terms of just getting some stuff in Maya, sometimes it's hard to figure this out. Oh, and you know, what am I pressing? You might apply surfaces and you might only see this. Remember that there's different views. Here's the wireframe view. Here's kind of a solid shape view, and if I press, that was pressing 5 on the number keys above the alphas, and if I press 6 above there, the alphas, then I get to see the textures as well. Let's see, if you press 5 or 6 on the numeric keypad, it's the same thing. So you could try it out either way. But if you're not seeing the texture, make sure that you're pressing 6, because if you're just pressing 5, it won't show up. The key is you can see in the material that it's actually applied. So it's really just an issue of getting it to preview properly. Okay, hopefully that kind of gets you started with surfacing.